This is September 10th, 2024 meeting of the City of Jefferson Historic Preservation Commission. My name is Alan Wheat, and I am the chairperson of the commission. And we will start down here with Christine Boston. If you'll introduce yourselves for a roll call.
Dr. Christine Boston.
Brad Schaefer. Brandon Warren.
Donna Dietz.
Tiffany Patterson.
Deborah Green.
Laura Ward.
Aaron Neely.
And then we have staff.
Amanda Gallagher, city staff.
Rachel Senzi, Neighborhood Services.
Okay. And we do have a quorum here. Can I have a motion to adopt the agenda as printed?
So move.
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay. Motion carries. Can I have a motion to approve the regular meeting minutes of August 13th, 2024?
So move.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, motion carries. New business, Rachel. Historic Preservation Code revision, public comment.
Yes. So as some of the members on this body are aware of, we created a temporary committee through the city council and the mayor appointed to have a stakeholders committee from the community review our current historic preservation code. The suggestions from that committee included, instead of having sections of historic preservation sprinkled throughout the code, such as signage, building code, zoning code, was to consolidate all of the compliance and local ordinances dealing with historic preservation into its own chapter. That committee worked for over 2 years, going line by line of our existing code and drafting new code. So I'm happy to share with you the draft code that was included. We sent that out to our stakeholders that were part of that committee, and then they shared with their respective organizations, groups, or interest parties for a 30-day public comment period. So within your packets, we included 3 public comments that were received. And we did include Tiffany Patterson's comments from the last Historic Preservation Commission meeting. Because we were in that public comment period, we wanted to make sure that before we changed anything, that we included that. And that was specific to the definition of National Register. And that's included on page 7 of your packet. On page 8, we did receive comments from the Jefferson City Area Board of Realtors, specific to signature threshold, timing of certificate appropriateness, and recording information. And we can go through those comments specifically, or if you had time to look at them on your own. It's up to you all. We can circle back if you want me to. Also received comments from our own staff, but we wanted to make sure that they were incorporated on just making sure that we could enforce it. So we did ask our property maintenance inspector to look through and see if this was something that we could enforce legally, and making sure that they would go through the course. We did have our attorney look at it, but it's sometimes good to have the people that are in the community trying to enforce look at it as well. So at this time, the commission can take a couple of actions. You could consider the comments, adopt some, all of them. You could accept the draft as is. The next step would be going through, so let me back up a little bit and go through the process. So if this body chooses to adopt or chooses to support new code revisions that are included in the packet, the next step is it would go to planning and zoning, since it does have land use requirements incorporated into the code, and since we would be impacting the zoning code. Once we get through there, we go to planning, or Public Works and Planning as a council committee, and then if it passes through there, then it would go to full council for review as an ordinance. It's got a long journey ahead of it, so you just take your time. We've already been working 2.5 years on it, so what's a few more months to go to it. But back to the options is you could not approve. You could send it back to the stakeholders committee for revisions. You could accept revisions. You can make revisions yourself. You could adopt it as is and move it on. So it's really, this body is driving the bus now. So it's up to you on how you feel we should proceed with the code as presented. Happy to answer any questions.
Questions?
How do we deal with the comments? Because one of the comments from the Board of Realtors, I think is pretty salient, because the group or the revising committee suggested 33% of a neighborhood signatures would give a landmark designation. They say that, maybe 75% was too high, but 50%. So if you think about it, if you're in a neighborhood and less than 50% of your neighbors said, yeah, we want to be in a landmark district, then the burden is on a whole bunch of other people. And they might not want that, so. And speaking as one who was on the revision committee.
Yeah, there was.
I don't remember why the discussion was to move it to 33. Do you, Laura?
I don't remember either.
There were several of us on this committee, and I remember there was a lot of discussion regarding this.
I don't remember why it was 33. I thought it was going to be something higher.
And the chair of the committee is a realtor.
Yes, I was actually at the meeting when this was discussed.
And I
And so
think
was, so was Bunny.
passed unanimously. But I mean, I do agree. I see what you're saying. 50% will be a lot easier than 75, being someone who had to get that threshold for the Lower Jefferson Conservation District. So, I think we too need to look at what we think is going to pass through council. I mean, personally, I love the 33% because I think it's easier for neighborhoods to obtain a historic district when they're living in that area and investing in that area. But I would be okay with 50%. I know we also discussed the deed at the last meeting, and I don't remember where we landed on that. I think we all agreed that's a good idea, but do we know what will trigger that to occur? Is that something that would come from the staff, from the property owner? Is there a cost to the property owner on changing your deed? Do you know any of
I mean, we do deed restrictions on certain properties.
Okay, already.
It's $27 to record. So,
Okay.
that could be something that we budgeted as a city, or that could be, that conversation of how much to charge for an application or an acceptance fee. That could be taken into consideration, is to make sure that those, the deed fees to record, the recording fees are covered. So there's different ways that you could do that. I remember having the conversation as well about having those deed, I don't want to call them deed restrictions, but just identified on the property record that they're stored.
And I would support that, because I think that just puts more teeth and less error in the future for someone who purchases a property not to know that they're living in a historic district that requires them to maintain their exterior a certain way if they renovate. So.
Green?
I have a question. What is the financial cost going to be to an individual? Say I live in a neighborhood and all of a sudden it becomes, a historic district, and I have to adhere to these policies. Something happens, like a tree falls in the house, and I have to get the exterior fixed. I'm then going to have to, follow up with those requirements based on that historic district. My concern is if we have a lower income neighborhood that is a historic district, and that oftentimes is the case, are we pricing those current residents out of that neighborhood? Are we encouraging gentrification?
It only triggers a cost if what you're gonna do to your property requires a permit. Like if you're, well, in a district, like currently, if you put a new roof on, you don't have to get a permit for that. However, Rachel, my understanding, if you're in a district, then you would have to get a permit to make sure that the materials you're going to choose matches what's in the guidelines.
I'm not trying to be against the historic district. My concern is if we say 33% and we're in a lower income neighborhood, is that going to detriment the lower income individuals in that neighborhood? You know, it's one of those catch-22s. Like, yes, we want to preserve history, but we also don't want to price out individuals who've been living there for generations. You know, or just be there recently because it was something they could afford, and all of a sudden something happens, like a tornado, or like, you know, a flood, or, you know, just randomly a tree falls on someone's house, which almost happened to me a couple times. You know, is that then going to be a financial detriment because the 33% threshold was lowered?
I think that's a legitimate question because we had an example on East McCarty Street, the house that ended up putting a metal roof on that was not up to the
Code.
code, and they were fined, or at least they should have been.
They had to stop work.
Yeah, and then that house was
Well,
on
it's
the
still
floor.
there, or it was still there.
Well, my question is, and sorry, I don't have this memorized, or usually there's a financial hardship procedure in most historic district.
I didn't. Is it in this?
I don't remember.
I didn't read it.
That's a fairly common piece of.
How we had,
I don't remember.
I'm thinking of a district not too far from here that I believe is already a historic district. I know that there are people investing in there, but they're investing in there because it's something they can afford and because of the history of that neighborhood. But if something were to happen, they would be totally at a loss for renovating it because, you know, they just don't have that money.
Well, if it's the School Street district, you can only invest so much, period.
Right.
Because of not historic
FEMA.
district restrictions, but because of FEMA
Yeah, that cuts
restrictions.
75% notarized signatures.
I don't want to see that happening again.
I would.
That's beyond us, but.
I would speak in favor of going to 50% than 33%. I'd like to think at least 50% of the neighborhood. Otherwise, I think irregardless, you're going to have an issue with a neighborhood. As much as I want the historic districts, I think there's going to be a lot of pushback. If half the neighborhood can't agree to do this, there's always going to be an issue. 51%, really.
Yeah, 51.
Yeah, really 51%.
I mean, again, I want to see more historic districts, but if you have a situation where you have a bunch of rich investors coming into a neighborhood and purposely purchasing property low, making them nice in the historic standards, and then pushing out the quote-unquote riffraff, lower income individuals, that becomes a serious problem. And I have seen that in other cities, because I actually have friends who have studied that phenomenon as part of their doctoral research.
So how about if we go ahead and
Anyway, whether it's a historic district or not.
That's just one strategy. I can see that happen here. Very
At least our historic streetscapes would
Trying
be
to find the right-
preserved.
So why don't we go ahead and handle the signature threshold? Sounds like since we've discussed it and everything, would somebody want to, you want us to do a vote on that?
Don't we have an amendment first?
You have to amend the revised ordinances.
Well, this here's from the,
Yeah, and this
What do we want to
body
do?
is providing a recommendation. So you can formulate all the recommendations tonight. You can wait until the next meeting. You can send it back to the stakeholders committee. So if you want to vote, it'd be voting on a recommendation, not voting to amend the draft.
right. So that's all we're
So it
doing.
would be a motion, not an amendment, but a motion. I would move to change 33% to 51%.
On the signature threshold.
I'm sorry, did you say 51?
51%. Okay, so we have a motion for 51% on the signature threshold from 33%. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, any other discussion? You want to do it?
Boston,
Aye.
Dietz,
Aye.
Green,
Aye.
Patterson,
Aye.
Schaefer,
Aye.
Ward,
Aye.
Warren,
Aye.
Wheat.
Aye. And the motion carries. Okay.
And I'd like to make a motion that we addressed the deed restriction too.
And you're talking about on page 9?
Yes.
Recording information?
Yes, the
Is that what
committee
we-
also discussed that too, and from what I can remember, we thought that that was a good idea, but we
Didn't know how.
never voted on actually making it an action item. Isn't that what you recall too, Brad?
Rachel, could, if we put that in, that it needs to be recorded on all the properties in those districts, is there any mechanism within city grants, CBDG grants or anything like that, that can take a lump sum and go and do that as a recording on all of the deeds that would be affected, as opposed to each individual homeowner having to do it?
Well, I think if we are forced, we'd have to have some sort of mechanism in the code to either require the homeowner to do it or for the city to be tasked to do it.
That's what I'm asking.
I wouldn't do it with CDBG funds because you'd be federalizing the entire project just for a $27.
I'm just looking to see what mechanism we could use as opposed to having to tap into those, all the individual homeowners for.
I wonder if you could
whatever fee
record
is.
something just under the subdivision.
Under the district?
Yeah. Well, under the subdivision,
so.
because I mean, that shows up in the title work, so then it would show up.
But how would that affect any home that got
Yeah.
renovated
Well,
that didn't go through that process before the change to the historic district?
Well, that's what I'm saying. I mean, if they went through and recorded it on the historic districts subdivisions.
We just said this house, but not this house?
Not all historic districts are going to be in a subdivision. Because you have, if they're older, they're just going to
But
be.
most of them have some sort of a outlet or
In-lot,
in-lot something.
yeah, in-lot, out-lot.
We can follow up.
I just wonder if it might be
Yeah, we
a
need to find
simpler.
Yeah, because I remember the Lower Jefferson District, Conservation District, it's called Crandall's Addition. You know, but you could have some homes that seep into another addition, another subdivision.
And you'd have to cross-check it, but it might be,
Also,
I don't know.
keep into consideration, we don't have that many local historic districts. So
To go back and get.
the number of times that this would come up, maybe it would be, a temporary pain point on city staff, but that happens. We have 3 existing local historic districts.
Last 20 years.
Local historic districts.
Yeah. So it would not be.
So going back through and capturing it, the city could capture a one-time thing for those 3 districts that are there, and then any future ones would have to be put on as
And this
it
is
becomes a
specific
district.
To local districts, not National Register.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay, so what is your,
I'd like to make a motion to recommend to the Code Revision Committee that we make deed, what is that, a deed restriction? And
Recording.
recording, on properties that are within our local historic districts. Second.
thanks for the motion and a second.
Can I
Yes.
ask a point? Are you supporting the comment that was made by the Board of Realtors? You want to do what they're asking?
Yeah, requiring a record on a deed if the property is in a historic district, yes. I agree that it will take out any confusion for our members. Members meaning, he's referring to the realtors. When they go to show a property, a lot of them don't have any idea that, the property's in a district. I believe the Lower Jefferson one is the only one that has signage at either end of it. But still, people may not be aware of what that is, that it requires, city permits and certain guidelines to follow for exterior renovations.
Who seconded that over here? Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Do we have any discussion? Okay, ready for the vote?
Boston,
Aye.
Dietz,
Aye.
Green,
Aye.
Patterson,
Aye.
Schaefer, Ward,
Aye.
Warren,
Aye.
Wheat.
Aye. Do we need to go back to anything on Tiffany's, or are we good on hers?
No, you'll have to, if you want that
Make a motion,
recommendation.
actually.
Oh, I
Okay.
thought we already
Do
voted
you
on that.
want to make a motion on yours, Tiffany,
No, that's part of
on page 7?
Oh, yeah, I'll make a motion that the definition of National Register property be updated, as noted in my comment here.
I will second that. Butcher.
Yeah, I think it's contributing
Yeah,
needed to be added.
Yeah, that
Let's do it.
individually listed or contributing to a National Register district.
So we have a motion and a second. Any more discussion? Okay.
Okay. Boston,
Aye.
Dietz,
Aye.
Green,
Aye.
Patterson, Schaefer, Ward, Warren, Wheat.
Aye. Okay, so while we're on Tiffany, what was it you said earlier about the if something was too much of a cost?
Yeah, a lot.
Doesn't seem to be in
A
this.
lot of historic preservation ordinances do have like a financial hardship process where you can show that I'm broke and I'm living on Social Security and I can afford to make the $500 payment, but I can't afford the $1,500 payment or whatever. And a lot of ordinances do have that process, but I don't have an example handy.
So is this going to go back to the preservation code revision group anyways?
Yeah, well, you can, this body can either choose to send it on to planning and zoning, keep it here,
Send it back.
or send it back.
So do we want to try to draft something for this financial hardship, or do we want to send it back to?
Where would that funding come from, though?
I mean, a question.
Well, I mean, you wouldn't support their additional costs. It would just say that we are making an exception for,
Some of the materials.
so that you can repair the building without incurring additional costs. Because the repair is gonna have to be made, but it's kind of like the metal roof thing, like, is it better to let the metal roof grow and have a house standing, or is it better to let the metal roof, not let them do the metal roof and then the building falls down?
But irregardless, they're going to come before HPC irregardless though.
Yes, I mean.
So it's kind of like the ones that we did on Lafayette where we approved the vinyl windows and things like that because of the cost
Right.
difference for the property.
And I will note
So could we still,
that
would the,
not all certificate of appropriateness applications would come through the HPC.
right?
There's under section 15A-11B is administrative approval. So if administratively that request fits the design standards for that historic district, they can go ahead and proceed with, you can get an administrative COA.
You said it's 15,
Page 22, thank you.
You're saying if it does meet the code, though.
So every time a local historic
Or the
district
standard.
comes in, it's gonna come with design standards, like this is what your roof should look like, this is what your porch should look like very specific. So if it's very black and white, it checks all the boxes.
Yeah, then they don't need that, right?
Then they don't have to wait a month to come before this body. But if they fall within a gray area, or they're asking for an exception to the design standards,
Which,
or, yeah.
like this could be, right? Okay.
So if the Wisconsin Historical Society has a nice webpage about economic hardship and historic preservation commission design review. And it talks about why you should have a hardship provisions in these, and it also talks about tips for considering hardship claims. And then examples of those kind of claims. And there's another thing that says hardship provisions operate as a safety valve to prevent the land use regulation of a private property from becoming so burdensome as to approach a taking without adequate compensation. So I think it's something that, like I said, if you Google financial hardship provisions in historic preservation or historic district ordinances, it'll come up with some good guidance on that, and you can probably find some examples of that. But I do think, this issue of it possibly becoming a taking is something that needs to be avoided in the final ordinance.
May I ask a follow-up question?
Sure.
Do you want, if this body moves forward on economic hardship, where would that consideration take place? Would it take place during the initial review of a certificate of appropriateness or through an appeals process by an applicant?
I think you could put it in either location. I think a lot of times it comes in after the initial review, and like you say, like if you reject it, they go, well, you rejected it, but I can't afford to do blah, blah, blah. And then you have that discussion. But I think, I think there are smarter people who've gone through this than me. So maybe look at some of that guidance on economic hardship.
Yeah, I would argue that we need to look at that before we make a hard and fast decision, because I can see it being a hindrance if you add additional steps, particularly to impoverished individuals who are already stressed about things because of the poverty situation, and then you add in, oh, we rejected it, now you have to do these extra steps. I could just see someone absolutely crumbling and just being like, I'm selling my property, which is not what we want.
And we only review once a month or whatever,
Yeah.
too.
Yeah, and that could also cause a burden onto the property. If, you got a hole in your roof and you got to fix it, waiting a month may not be an option.
Well, there is provision for a desk review by staff in the new ordinance.
Yeah.
So it's not necessarily going to come to us immediately. So I don't know if that's something that's would be better flagged in the desk review, or.
I think that would be a hard sell to staff, because then you're asking staff to be, have an opinion on, instead of saying, oh yeah, that roof setback is, or the setback of that property is the same as, this fits specifically, or yes, those are architectural shingles or slate shingles or slate roof, whatever. Because like when it's in design standards, then it's very black and white. When you're examining economic hardships, I'll have to take a look at but then you're leaving city staff to determine if that is an economic hardship or not, instead of a citizen body.
Okay.
You want to write a motion for next month?
Yeah, I think that needs to go to the committee to talk about
Along
it.
with our recommendations, and
Yes.
recommend that they address that. I'm sitting here trying to think when economic hardship would come into play, because these guidelines generally address window sizes, door sizes. So if you're replacing your door, you can replace your door. But if you want to make it, a 2 entry door, that's when you would be like, nope, that doesn't fit. Or your window sizes, or your roof pitches, or adding a dormer to a roof that didn't have a dormer. You're looking at the materials you're using.
But a storm could easily rip off a porch.
Exactly.
Rip off a porch, yes, and then you put it back. You're going to have to put it back anyway.
But we ran into this though in Lafayette, because they originally did not put a porch back that met our guidelines, and they had to come back before this committee they had to redo it.
Mm-hmm.
So because there was a difference in materials.
The deed recording is going to come into play to catch that, you would hope, because they purchased that property, correct? And they didn't realize they were in a district, and they just started fixing their front porch. And I think it was regarding the type of materials they were using.
Yeah.
And, you know, they came here and we were
The
like,
size of the
we were like,
spindles.
okay, you know, that's gonna happen anyway, you know? So, I don't know.
So on page 23, and we'll see if this satisfies.
You're going by the top page
Yeah.
number?
Oh, yeah, top
Thank
page
you.
number, top page number is page 23, bottom page number is 13. Under,
Good catch.
well, it's the code and the page number. Under E, decisions on certificate of appropriateness, the subsection 3, the requested work, so this is after its review of an application for certificate of appropriateness, the Historic Preservation Commission shall make one of the following findings. The work is appropriate, COA issued. The work is inappropriate, application denied. And then there's number 3. The requested work is inappropriate, but the application may be approved with conditions that shall be adhered. The Historic Preservation Commission shall state the reasons for conditions, citing adopted Secretary of Interior standards and design standards for the district.
So it's a way to make exceptions.
Would that be where you could add language on economic hardship?
Yeah,
I think that's
due
the best.
to guidelines not being met or financial hindrance. I don't know. You know, kind of add why it wouldn't be appropriate. Examples of why it wouldn't be reasons why it's not appropriate. I don't know.
We could go ahead and we could make a motion to change that.
You could make a motion
Recommendation.
to recommend changing the language specifically. You could make a motion to send it back to the stakeholders committee.
And the stakeholders are the ones here who would change that. If we recommended that, it go back to them regardless.
Committee.
If you kick it back to committee, they could change the draft. If you want to put the language in as a recommendation, that would just be the next. So we'll take the draft as is with a list of Historic Preservation Commission recommendations.
The city council.
To Planning and Zoning Commission. So then they could consider it, and then once it ended up at city council, we would incorporate all those recommendations into a draft, and then city council would decide. So it's completely up to you which direction you want.
Aaron.
Tiffany gave some examples of maybe other communities, or would you have to prove a hardship, or would, and if not, would that kind of open that to anybody that wanna-
The recommendations, like the Wisconsin Historical Society, their HBC training, they say to make sure sufficient evidence, you have to present evidence, and they consider all aspects, including costs and expenditures, taxes, assessed value, vacancy rates, financing, availability of economic incentives such as loans or tax credit, efforts to find alternative uses, and efforts to rent or sell the property.
evidence of hardship?
Yeah. So you can't just say, I'm poor, let me do what I want. You have to say, my income is this, I'm living on Social Security, this is how much money I have for this project, blah, blah, blah. Rather than just like,
You have to state a case.
you have to state a case, yeah. It's not just coming in and saying, I don't have money to do this.
Okay, so how do we want to proceed then? Do we want to send it back then about looking at a financial hardship? And let them
Send it back to
decide,
committee.
figure out what to do with it?
I think
I
a little more research,
think the
yeah.
committee would appreciate taking another look at
With the recommendations, yeah.
recommendations.
Yeah. Were you going to say something?
No, I wasn't.
Oh.
Counting the number of us who were actually on.
So that committee,
That have been meeting for 2
Three on
years.
You guys are okay with that?
Yeah.
okay, I just want to clear, I don't want to,
Larger than.
I don't want daggers.
No, it's a big committee. It's
We'll get you later, Chris.
Okay, so do we need to do a motion to do that, or
Any emotion
to
to send it back?
send that back with
Well, are
as
you-
a hardship?
I'd like to make a motion to send
develop
back
some
to
language.
committee with our recommendations and to look at adding a financial hardship.
Why don't we, hang on just 1 minute. That was a question first.
So are you,
Sorry.
I would prefer to have all the list of recommendations, and then if you want to send the code with those recommendations back to me, do it that way instead of, because right now we've kind of got split. Because the motion that you put forward would only be for that committee to consider economic hardships and not the rest of the recommendations that we just
Will you
made.
withdraw that a minute?
I did say with recommendations, you want me to list what those were?
Well, we need to look at this one other recommendation.
Yeah.
too.
Oh, we have another one?
Come all the way.
Will you withdraw that?
I withdraw.
Oh,
Thank you. Okay, so then we have the one that came from the city on
Before you
enforcement.
move from the Board of Realtors, I have a question for them. Because we discussed in committee a timeline for certificate of appropriateness, but they're recommending that the director have 3 business days to review applications. And is that long enough?
No.
That's why I
That seems
didn't-
like,
Okay, that's why we're
That's why-
ignoring, all right.
Yeah.
That's why.
Okay, I'm good.
that just seems.
You didn't have to do all the recommendations.
Yeah.
Okay, so back to the city. Enforcement agency. First, chapter 8.
That's of the city ordinances, enforcement agency.
So is he just recommending that we mention the Department of Planning and Protective Services will enforce the provisions in this chapter?
Just assigning a section of either this body, which I wouldn't recommend, but if you want staff to enforce the code, assign it to them.
Yeah, I think that's, reasonable and easy, and I don't think it's, would be objectable, so. I make a recommendation to add that language regarding the Department of Planning and Protective Services being the enforcement agency for the provisions of this Preservation Code chapter. Make recommendation that that be added and sent to, that recommendation sent to the committee.
And that's in the section 8.1. Is that right? Section 8.1?
Yeah, 8.1 enforcement agency.
Yeah. So we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay. Any more discussion?
Boston. Dietz.
Aye.
Green.
Aye.
Patterson.
Yes.
Schaefer.
Aye.
Ward.
Aye.
Warren.
Aye.
Wheat.
Aye. Okay, and the motion carries. Okay, then they also have permit fees and penalties. The fees for building construction permits shall be set in Appendix Y.
Is there a recommendation there?
Well, I think perhaps not a recommendation, but a translation. So I think he used the example of the permit fees and penalties. This section of code comes directly from Chapter 8, which is our building code. So if we have a certificate of appropriateness fee to apply, like if they come in and say, I need a certificate of appropriateness for that review, if there's a fee established for that review, it would show up in Appendix Y. And then for penalty failure to obtain a certificate of appropriateness, could be similar to what is in the building code if you do not get a building permit. We've used this in the past, and it's something that staff can initiate. And basically, it works if you didn't get a certificate of appropriateness, and you just didn't realize that you needed to come get one, then you just have to pay double that application request fee. And then there's a series of penalties. If you do it again, you pay triple. And then so it's like a phased approach of like, did you just mistakenly were unaware that you needed to go through this process, or are you kind of habitual and you need to be taken through a stronger process?
I mean, I think we should do
Similar to,
all of that, and I thought as a committee member that city staff had already looked at all of it and made their recommendations, and we had adopted it.
Kind of what I thought was the
Draft.
last page.
So I don't think that these would be anything that the committee would have a problem with, because they help the process and they help city staff to follow the process. And
I think it's also greater transparency to property owners. Property owners like, oh, I do this, here's the consequence.
Yeah, and I would, recommendation would be to also list it similar to what Davis outlined here, that matches what we've already got in the building code.
So
Just
you
needing
will
to-
make a motion that we recommend the permit fees.
Put that in the motion to recommend, put the fees in the section itself.
Second, okay. Motion second, are you good with that? Okay.
Boston. Dietz.
Aye.
Green.
Aye.
Patterson.
Yes.
Schaefer. Ward.
Aye.
Warren.
Aye.
Lee.
Aye. Okay, and then.
Was that just the,
That was permit fees and penalties.
Okay.
That's what your motion only included, correct? Okay, so then I assume that permit and demolish is the same steps.
were you
Those-
just referencing section A on that last vote? That subsection A? Like to having?
Section 8, yeah, this, making it similar to what's already in the building code.
Okay.
That Dave quotes in here.
Okay.
Ellie, I'll make a motion that all of these recommendations be forwarded back to the.
Okay, there's one more here.
Commission. Oh, I'm sorry.
There's permit to demolish also.
I thought that, I
Do
kind
we
of,
need to do that separate, or is that included in, it's
That's just
832?
examples.
Okay. That's this?
Yeah, I think he's
Yeah.
saying like these are examples.
Okay,
Example.
okay, very good.
I'm sorry, I need to make sure I'm following along properly. So the last vote was specifically to make sure that the fees were set forth in Appendix Y, or was it Appendix Y and the
B.
tailored
Included in-
penalty?
You meant to include B also, A and B.
this is, yeah, that we follow, similar to what Dave has listed here, that we follow the building code, incorporate that into the section we've already got on enforcement. Just put that to the end of it, that it follows the same line as the building code.
Is that how you have it?
Y and fees. I was understanding that you were taking both A and B.
Okay.
Is everyone clear? Was everyone clear on that when they voted? Okay. Okay, now, earlier you started to make a motion.
Yeah, and then you said it again.
No, that's,
That all recommendations that from this evening be moved to the committee.
That's all right.
okay, so you want to
Second.
second it? Okay. So the motion is second. Any discussion?
Boston. Dietz. Green.
Aye.
Patterson.
Yes.
Schaefer. Ward.
Aye.
Warren.
Aye.
Lee.
Aye. So then we have public comments.
I'm sorry?
Public comments also on this?
We'll move the public comments received as well as the draft. And so the next
Okay.
time, we'll move it back to committee. They'll have the ability to amend the draft, and then bring it back to this body once that draft is completed.
Okay,
Is there a timeline that they have?
all right, so then,
Timer.
we're good on this then? Okay, next thing is section 106 review, 915 Jefferson Street.
Yes. Again, section 106 reviews are part of an environmental review package that we go through anytime that we apply federal funds to a project. The first one we have is for the demolition of 915 Jefferson Street. And this is not, the body is not reviewing approval of the demolition. The body is reviewing on whether or not cultural resources are impacted. So on page 29 of your packet, you have the Historic Preservation Commission assessment, that section 106 review. What we're looking for is for the commission to identify, based on for the commission to come up with a determination on if this is impacting cultural resources. Background of this property is it's currently owned by the Salvation Army. The property has been declared dangerous and a blighted residential structure, and it's been vacant and abandoned since 2021. Up on the screen and also included in your packet is a map of the location of the property. In use for Salvation Army currently is a vacant lot. They do have expansion plans for the Center of Hope. They just didn't have a reuse clearly identified at the time that they submitted their application for community development block grant funds. Community development block grant funds are the federal funds that are requiring us to go through this process. We did submit part of the Section 106 process is that any stakeholder can provide comment on whether or not the demolition of this building would impact cultural resources. And then we also communicate with the 4 tribes that were familiar with this area, as well as the State Historic Preservation Office for review. Generally, we submit it to the State Historic Preservation Office for review, and then we follow up with this body. We did already receive a no adverse effect letter from the CHIPO on this one. And we'll kind of go through photos real quick. This property was, so when city staff was completing the no adverse effects determination, we utilized a 1995 Old Munich Southside survey in which the property was not identified as individually eligible, nor was there district potential for the area. So no National Register eligible properties are adjacent to the structure. And here's the street view.
So is there anything between Salvation Army and East Atchison besides this?
Let me go back to the map.
Everything else is
They took
gone,
the other
right?
one down.
There were 3 along there, but now this is the only one that's left, is that right?
I think
And there's one next
There is
to
one
it.
there left.
One
Okay.
next to it, the scuba shop is still being torn down.
it's still being torn down.
Yeah.
Scuba shop still be, but there will still be one structure left there. There will still be one of the 3 left after this one's done.
Yes.
Where the doctor's office was, isn't it where that doctor's office was at one point?
I'm not sure.
Well, it's this one with the bubbly front, right, with the white.
Yes, that's right next.
That's the only one that's left.
And then the Loman House was next to this one. And we lost the Loman House too.
Why was this declared dangerous, do you know?
There used to be a back porch.
Yeah.
So you can kind of see where it used to be on that picture that I have up on the screen. So the back porch is what was that declaration was the reason.
Based on no back porch.
Yeah, and so the order to abate was removal of that back porch, and it was removed.
So it's been abated or it has not been abated.
Oh, it has been abated.
So it's no longer a dangerous business.
Yes.
The dangerous structure that was attached to it has been removed.
I believe there was some other, I'll have to pull up the dangerous building report, but I believe there's trash and that sort of like nuisance type activities, but I'd have to, the main architectural problem was that back porch, and that was abated, but I'd have to refer back to the original dangerous buildings declaration to see if it was still dangerous or not. So I retract my former yes. I don't know.
Do you have any other questions for Rachel on this?
Just a statement, it feels like we're cut off at the knees by already having a determination for the SHPO.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And why was their determination? Were they using the 1995 survey?
Likely.
Well, I'd like to note and put on record that there's 3 National Register homes across the street from this building, and it will have a negative effect on historic structures and our historic South Side. I mean, I'm getting tired of, well, it's the only one left. Well, it's the only one left because we continue to approve these. It's just frustrating.
We have a public comment also. We want to do a public comment now. Yeah. Okay. Matt, do you want to come up here and then identify yourself?
Hello, my name is Matt Holland. I am here as president of the Old Munichburg Association. Really, my commentary, I think most everything that I would have said has been addressed, and that is that the property was dangerous due to a porch that has been removed. And the largest thing that we find frustrating is that the determination that this is not contributing to anything is based off of a 1995 survey. So if the fact that there are multiple National Register properties across the road, and even if you want to go out a block further, much more in the area, that seems like that's being ignored because nobody has put any effort into documenting anything on the south side for over 20 years. Now, we've tried several times, and there's nothing directed at this group here. We are, very happy with how historic preservation has handled a lot of it, and we look forward to the upcoming code revisions so that we can potentially enact some additional controls in the area. But our biggest concern is just that it doesn't seem like it's the recommendation that this is not contributing and that it should come down is based upon our current reality. It's based upon outdated information. So I don't know if it's possible to send this back to anybody for review of the actual contributing properties in the area, or if this is just, I don't know the word I'm looking for, a formality, I guess, where you will have to go along with the recommendation. But that's our standing on it, I believe, and that's all I've got to say.
Well, I would argue this from someone who used to do National Register nominations for a living, for 11 years. I do think that there is an argument that it would be a negative, or it would have an adverse effect on the properties across the street because it's part of their setting. When you look at the integrity of a property, whether it's individual or as a district, or this, you look at setting. And so maybe this property is not individually eligible for list in the National Register. Maybe there is not a district there currently, or no one has analyzed it in 30 years. I mean, we're looking at 30 years since 1995. That makes me feel really old, but it's true. When we looked at the individual listings for the properties across the street, that was one of the considerations that was part of that. What is the setting of this property? And the setting of that property was that there were other historic resources in the neighborhood. And we are eating away at that by leaving this. And whether or not, what we say here has any effect on this, I do want to make the stand and say, I disagree with the State Historic Preservation Office's assessment. I do think there are historic properties affected by the demolition of this property, and that would be my recommendation.
Totally agree, Tiff.
Can I make one other comment? The only other thing is that we find it kind of disheartening that federal money is being used to do what we feel is damage to our neighborhood. Now, on one hand, you can look at this building and go, there's nothing beautiful about it now. But we look at it as, is there any way that, what keeps a lot of these buildings from being rehabilitated are stubborn owners and the cost to get the property away from them. And then, a lot of times the cost due to the negligence from the previous owner. Now, there's not a whole lot that can be done about that. It works the way it works. But to see federal funds that could just as easily be appropriated toward rehabbing that building and finding a new use for it. It's a house. Salvation Army houses people. It's kind of what it was built to do. It seems like, there should be some way to encourage them to look at using it as a housing unit and protecting some of the historical significance of the neighborhood, some of the streetscape. The house itself may not have any historical significance, but when you've got historical properties across the road from it, you know, they become kind of like the buck teeth of the neighborhood, just sticking out there if you remove everything else around them that's the setting. You know, they're historic on their own for who lived there, but that person lived in a neighborhood, and, you know, when possible, to try and preserve some of the feel of that area, you know, I think has a lot of value in it, even if you can't say that, you know, the 32nd governor of the state lived in this house or something like that.
I've said it numerous times in this body. We have a housing problem in this city. I'm sick and tired of people at my workplace, Lincoln University, coming to me and saying, hey, Christine, you live here in Jeff City. We have new faculty, we have new staff. They want to live in Jeff City. Where can they go? And I have to stop myself from laughing because that's the reaction I got back in 2016. The problem has gotten worse since then, post-tornado. So I'm, much like with what Matt said, it seems like a horrible idea for any organization, particularly Salvation Army, where the Center of Hope is a homeless shelter, to tear down something that could be a low-income transitional house for individuals who are trying to get off the streets. And yes, we have a serious homeless problem here in this town as well. That's another story that I will not get onto right now. Oh, I could go forever. I had a student do it. Anyway, it's garbage. I don't think we should approve it. I know we can't tell Salvation Army what to do, but I don't like seeing beautiful homes that are in poor condition, that are not dangerous, being torn down, and we don't have housing for people who can afford it, let alone housing for people who can't afford it. If we want to solve all the problems in this city, we're going to have to do something instead of tearing homes down. And soapbox for now.
Okay. So the role of Historic Preservation Commission, what are our options here?
You are making a determination on those 4 checkboxes that's on page 29. So this is not whether or not to approve the demo or whether or not to allow federal funds to be used for the project. It is you are making a determination in your role in the Section 106 process. Now, when federal funds are deployed, and we talked about this a couple of meetings ago, cultural resources is one component of that environmental review. They look at endangered species, soil contamination, air quality, all sorts of environmental factors. And so this is this body's role in assessing specifically the cultural resources of deploying federal funds on this project.
Well, reading this document though, our comment, there's no checkbox for our comment.
Yeah, I was thinking that too. Our hands are kind of tied.
On top of which it still says the Salvation Army plans to demolish this dangerous structure, and it's no longer noted as dangerous if they've abated the problem.
I think I misspoke there. I'm not completely sure if it's still declared dangerous or not. I've got to go back and do the research and see if it's still standing. I know the main complaint was the porch, but I'm not sure if the other
Well, and there's
violations were.
nothing to show us. I mean, I see the wood on the windows, and, you know, the porch is missing and that kind of stuff. I've attacked a lot worse.
Right. And the reason why we didn't include the dangerous building package in this is because the determination is not about whether or not the structure is going to be demoed. It's about whether or not it's culturally significant. So it being dangerous or not really shouldn't weigh into this specific determination.
But we still don't have
Except
an
that-
option for what we've been talking about in regards to this affects the National Register of Properties across the street.
We'll make one up.
Can we?
Yeah.
Awesome. How do we do that?
Yes.
Well, I would just say we make a motion to say that demolition of this building would adversely affect the setting of the National Register of Properties across the street. Setting is part of the integrity of all National Register properties. It's part of that assessment.
And the cultural of the South Side and Old
As a whole,
Unitburg, the
yeah.
German heritage. By the way, when I first moved here, I was told by my realtor that was a high demand area because of the historic district. So I
I don't think it would be beneficial to the homeowners in the area to start tearing down homes because their property values are gonna go down. And as a property owner, that's something that would really make me,
Cut yourself.
Okay, so we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Yes.
Can you read them?
Oh my gosh, I don't even remember what I said. I will say that the demolition of this property has an adverse effect on the National Register listed properties in the Old Munich-Burke district.
and the old.
Because, or the Old Munich-Burke area, because it negatively impacts the integrity of setting for National Register listed properties. That was really long, sorry.
Add in the whole neighborhood as well.
Well, I said the Old
Area.
Munich-Burke area neighborhood.
Sorry, I don't know the lexicon.
No, that's, yeah.
Okay, so we have a motion.
Second.
Second. Okay, any more discussion?
All right.
Okay.
Boston.
Aye.
Keats.
Aye.
Green.
Aye.
Patterson.
Yes.
Schaefer. Ward.
Aye.
Warren.
Aye.
Aye. Okay.
Now, what does this do?
So a couple things. One, Amanda's gonna add a sweet checkbox to this form. We'll get that updated. We'll have our chair sign it. We'll send it back to the SHPO and ask for a re-review as part of the section 106. And see if it changes their determination.
I don't have a feeling some of us are gonna get phone calls.
Okay, so,
I don't care.
let's move on to section 106 review, 5011 Old Loman Road, Old Landing.
Chair, we,
Oh, I'm sorry.
your question, if you don't mind. When you send that back to the SHPO, Rachel, do you know what their processing time is or what it was previously on the first?
30 days.
Thank you.
So if they change their stance, and should we make note of the properties across the street on the National Register within our new box, our new?
Even
I just-
document who it is.
I just think on the form, there should be a process that regardless of, regardless of whether it's designated a landmark, that there needs to be, the Historic Preservation Commission, there's adequate documentation and understanding for us to make a decision that it's an historic property or contributes to the overall neighborhood or whatever, and that it will be an adverse effect.
Because the entire streetscape across the street is intact.
Right, it's a setting issue, it's an integrity of setting issue, and I don't know, like, maybe there just needs to be a box for another option that's blank, and every time we come against this that it doesn't fit any of these four, then we make a specific motion for that. And other, yes, other,
Big other.
colon,
Yeah, I like that.
blank line on the form.
It says, one of the boxes, the second box says adequate documentation has been provided that there'll be no historic properties affected. To Tiffany's point, do we list there will be properties affected and document specific properties, or just go with the flow?
So we already voted on what you wanted that box to say, and so we can update that box. But you're talking about future, instead of having adequate documentation has been provided, there will be historic properties affected, adversely affected by the current project and is not approved by this commission. For future form.
Neighborhood setting.
Properties affected neighborhood setting.
What does
Integrity of-
cultural resources encompass? The first.
I'm assuming that it's a site, or building, site, structure, or object.
Because it could be an archaeological site, it could be a statue, it could
Gotcha.
be a cemetery.
So do you need anything else from us on that?
Everybody clear? So the only thing I will add is that if the SHPO comes back with an adverse effect, that doesn't necessarily stop that demolition. It just means that there's probably a condition applied to that grant. But they will still have to go through review for their demolition permit.
And they would still qualify for CDBG funds?
Yes. If the federal agency, if we take into all the environmental factors, so that's like, to give an example, Transformational Housing 101 Jackson, they had an adverse effect because they wanted to replace their windows. It's in a National Register district. We had to enter into an MOA, basically mitigating the adverse effect of what we were going to be doing there. So there's mitigation terms that get applied to projects. Well, if you're going to be demoing this, we want recordation, we want some sort of public engagement project. We want, there's different ways that you can mitigate it.
Well, it's my understanding the CDBG funds, the priority is those funds are used in neighborhoods that are blighted, that are low income, that are around schools. You know, let's fix that's why when I was on council, I pushed to have sidewalks around Thorpe Gordon addressed with CDBG funds, because it's a lower income neighborhood. A lot of kids walk to school there, and it's by a school. It's my understanding that they're qualifying for these funds because they're removing blight. To me, that's not blight. To me, that's a historic building in a historic neighborhood. Yeah, it looks bad because it's boarded up, but it's not blight. So I don't think they even qualify for these fundings, especially since they're not going to add any housing. It's going to be a vacant lot. And I know they plan to add on in the future.
That's very nebulous.
But
Well, they have the Loman Prayer Garden that they can expand into. That was just my snide comment.
yeah.
It's upsetting that we're giving funds for this, but we can't help the Ginsky store, whatever it's called now, the lodge.
The lodge.
Yeah. Sorry.
It's all a public process of how you dictate where those funds go. So there's 3 national objectives that you meet under for CDBG funding. One of the national objectives is LMI, are you positively impacting low to moderate income? Urgent need, which is usually emergency. And then slum and blight removal. And this one's specific to the slum and blight's on the spot basis, and it does meet the definition and is eligible. They don't necessarily, but that's why we go through this environmental review process. This is exactly why they require us to go through this environmental review process. The federal government is asking each federal agency and department, do you have a problem with this project? And if somebody comes back and says yes, it doesn't necessarily mean that the project is completely eliminated, although sometimes it can. The federal agency can maybe make that determination that, is this too controversial? We're not spending federal funds here. But usually that takes a lot. So most likely what would come back is if the SHPO changes it to an adverse effect determination, they're going to require mitigation.
Will, in the application that goes for these federal funds, it be noted that the city's Historic Preservation Commission is not in favor of this, and that the neighborhood isn't in favor of it? The Old Unionsburg Association is not in favor of it. We had public comment against it. I mean, when you say, they might not do it because the controversy, I mean, are they going to know about this controversy?
They do. So that's part of the whole process. Is we'll get all the feedback that we get from the different agencies, and then we'll make determinations. There will be an adverse effect if the SHPO comes back and says, yeah, we're changing our determination. There's an adverse effect. We note that, and we are required to say this is what it triggers something else. It triggers those processes of mitigation, and then the federal agency may accept it based off of that. So they do take in stakeholder comments. They do take in the Historic Preservation Commission into consideration during this. And then there's another phase of public comment. This is environmental assessment, so there is going to be a 15-day public comment period and saying, hey, we've completed this environmental assessment. Here are the findings of this environmental assessment. You have 15 days to make a comment. And that's, we can tell you when that happens as well. So it's usually published in the paper. You have 15 days to supply your comments. That and those comments go through the request for release of funds. So there's so many different opportunities during this process for you or this body to make comment.
Thank you. I just want to go on record saying that, to me, the current owner of this property almost creates the checkbox for themselves. The current owner has been the owner for several years, and when you think about the checkbox for federal funds being a blighted property, they've created that to some extent by letting it sit there for several years. And I don't, certainly the guidelines are what the guidelines are, but I don't think it's appropriate. This is the ward I represent, and I certainly don't think it's appropriate for federal funds to be used on something that's been deemed blighted because an agency has let it sit there.
So this may be beyond the scope. I know this is definitely beyond the scope of this discussion, and this may be beyond the scope of this meeting or even this committee. But I've seen this happen more often than not in this city, where someone buys a property and they're like, I'm just going to let it sit, and then go to crap and tear it down. Is there a way we can stop that? I know we can't necessarily stop people from doing what the properties with their will, but that's the intent.
Well, people can make a complaint to the city for code violations. People can make complaints.
What kind of complaint?
Well, about the property condition.
It's still attached.
I mean, to me, that's the route you have to take.
I'll make maybe a slight correction. It's the Salvation Army. So you can check on page 32 the map that has, or the page that has the map. Salvation Army did not acquire this property until 2023. The previous owner before that had it since 1981.
Thank you.
Do we have a year built? I know it's not on Minmo GIS information.
18.
Okay.
I had it in our section 186
But
Yeah, it's
so
18.
if it does come for demo, it'll have to
From here.
be a hearing, and if it's denied, it'll have to go to council if.
Okay, so now, we're ready to move on to 5011 Old Bowman Road.
Finally, someone building housing? I'm shocked.
Once again, if anytime we're using federal funds, we have to go through an environmental process. This one is an environmental assessment. The Section 106 review is for the impact to cultural resources. It's 5011 Old Bowman Road. This is where the location is currently a vacant, somewhat vacant lot. It was already set up for development. This is where Stronghold Landing is proposed to go. If you'll recall, they were recipients of our Community Development Block Grant Disaster Recovery Funds. And they also received the Missouri Housing Development Commission's low-income housing tax credit, so they're bringing different levels to it. We have to do the environmental review because they are utilizing federal funds. This one's a little bit different, so the review is this impacting cultural resources? Photos are included in the packet and up on the screen. There is already, I would call it somewhat pad site ready. There is an access road into the development, and the rest of it is fields, but I believe water and sewer has already been laid.
So this land is disturbed in some way.
Yeah.
So we have an idea of potential archaeological
So we did, so part of this process is we reach out to the tribes.
Yes, I know, but because it's already been disturbed, we already have an idea of what might be under there. Not completely, but an idea. But we consider it a test pit.
I don't know that I would speak to that degree. So that's one of the things that the SHPO has to review, and I know this will probably get kicked over to the archaeologist reviewer.
Yeah.
Because it is, we don't know. But has there been water and sewer? Yes. But has the whole property been surveyed or had any sort of archaeological work done?
No, but
that's fine.
do we know how far the water and sewer went into the property?
I don't have that information.
I just don't. It's in my scope. At that point, that would be the archaeologist to deal with. Not me. Not this archaeologist.
You know, just to go off what Christine said, that would be my only concern, is that there might be an archaeological site. Of course, I don't know how much of that site was disturbed or how deeply it was disturbed. And
the cultural resource management firm would be employed.
I mean, they'll do shovel testing.
They would recover it unless it's something critical like a cemetery. Then that would stop the project, which we wouldn't know.
So I can't say that adequate documentation has been provided because I don't know archaeologically. I don't think there's any like buildings that will be, historic buildings that will be impacted or anything like that. So, you know, I don't know that we can make a determination on our 4 points. Although, just as a member of the Jefferson City public, I would say I'm supportive of building low-income housing.
The last time we did this, it was with the child care center right by the, I don't know what it's called, but yeah, the artificial river thing. I don't know. I can't think of the word. I'm tired. But it was that, and we checked the first one because everyone was like, well, and I said there might be because of what my little brother uncovered at his daycare. But for those who don't remember, weren't here, it was a couch. So it gave me a hard time.
Yeah, I think the first one is still our best. There's going to be
Low potential.
Potentially low potential, but we can't ever know.
we don't know on any.
Well, the SHPO's gonna look at their maps and they're gonna look at, because this hasn't gone to SHPO.
It has.
It has?
They haven't gotten back to us.
Oh, they haven't gotten back to us. Okay. I agree, maybe that first checkbox is the best checkbox.
You want to make a motion?
And that's Amanda, the SHPO, right?
Amy.
Amy,
I trust her to.
I mean, I know they're gonna look and see what's around there and all that stuff, so. So I make a motion that after review of initial submission, project area is low potential for occurrence of building resources.
All right, so we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Do we have any other discussion?
Boston.
Aye.
Deep. Aye. Green.
Aye.
Patterson. Schaefer.
Aye.
Ward.
Aye.
Warren.
Aye.
Wheat.
Aye. Okay, Rachel, HPF grant update.
I'm actually gonna toss this one over to Amanda since she's been
Oh.
on it much more closely.
All right, so we got from Stantec, our consultant for West Main Survey 2, we got our final forms and our survey report on Friday. So we sent that over to the SHPO yesterday, and they're going to review it. They're going to rush that review for us because the project has to be finished up by the end of the month. So hopefully we will have a finished product for you soon. Same thing with design guidelines, that is in the SHPO's hand as well. Also hoping to get that back by the end of the month. And then West Main Phase 3, we have not started yet. We're trying to wrap up these other two first, and then that's next on the agenda.
MSP update.
Yes, so we have had a little bit of movement on MSP on the Missouri State Penitentiary site. If you'll, so up on your screen is a map of of the project that we're working on utilizing community revitalization grant funds. We have been working with the Office of Administration throughout their duration of the, I want to call it, what are you calling it now? Is it One Health Lab or is it still One Health Lab? Okay. One Health Lab. And our cooperation with that project is in regard to raising Chestnut Street, extending Chestnut Street and raising it, its elevation by 5 feet. We're also working with the Department of Natural Resources in support of the remaining structures in the upper yard of the Missouri State Penitentiary becoming a state historic site. So within your packet, we did include a memo that was issued by the Department of Natural Resources to the Office of Administration, which we are copied on. Specific to the plans for wall demolition, they went through their own internal review process on what it takes to become a state historic site, and also taking into the challenge, backing up to the Chestnut Street elevation. The challenge is when you raise the elevation of Chestnut Street, because of its close proximity to the prison wall on that, what would be northeast corner, it would actually create so much pressure that it might push the wall down into the yard, and would have to be a berm created on the other side. It also makes it hard to develop inside the walls. So the what's up on your screen in orange was what DNR approved or supported. I can't say approved. Supported for demolition. We are waiting on the Office of Administration to give the approval, but that is the updated demolition plan for the wall. For the river market, we did go through an RFQ, or request for qualifications process. That contract will be on the Monday night council meeting on September 16th for approval by resolution to enter into a contract with Bartlett and West for final design of the river market, as well as Chestnut Street and any connection points. We are hoping to really work with our state partners to making sure that development really harmonizes with a future state historic site, and then also with the new structure of the One Health Lab. So having those partners at the table is the plan so far for MSP. I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have for that. Yes, sorry.
It's just really
It's not dumb, it's not labeled.
well, no, it is. It's just really tiny, and I was like, I'm trying to think in my head where Chestnut Street
Right,
is.
so right now, and it's hard to see on that map, it actually, there's a street there that gives access to the existing state health lab, and then it turns into gravel and it becomes sort of a maintenance access road down to the river, into the train tracks. So the new would be kind of a full-on city streetscapes on street parking.
I was like, I don't, it's not going down that far. But yeah, that makes sense if it was just gravel now. So I'm not driving down there.
Is that it? Sorry. Is it? We have any other questions for her on this? Okay. Moving on then, Paul Broom grant updates.
All right, so for the Paul Broom project, we have some recipients here. I put together this spreadsheet, and basically the way that I did this out was I took each individual project and figured out with their federal dollars what that percentage was of the total Paul Broom grant money. So if you see there where it says project percent of total Paul Broom grant money, so for example, Cole County Historical Society was funded 33% of the total grant. So I took 33% of the 206 210 East High Street funding, and that's where you get that last column for the extra grant money. Now, I think that was what the direction you guys provided us last
Correct.
time. So if you are okay with that.
Do we need to?
I move to accept this allocation of, reallocation of grant money to the remaining grantees.
So we have a motion and a second. Roll call, or just
Did we already vote to do this though?
Do we allocate?
Yeah.
we just didn't see the allocated fund amounts.
So Do we need to vote again?
Maybe since we have the amounts now.
Oh, okay.
Boston. Dietz.
Yeah.
Green.
Aye.
Patterson.
Yes.
Schaefer. Ward.
Aye.
Warren.
Aye.
And Weed.
Aye.
Have they been made aware that this is gonna occur?
They have been made aware, correct?
Some.
Okay, so, did you all have anything to say? Okay. Rebecca, you're with Cole County Historical
County,
Society,
okay.
That's right.
and then Kathy
And I'm
Wilbur,
with Jubilee Village.
which is Subway.
Yeah, and we're extremely excited to get started, so this is really great. This is really great.
We're very excited. We like to see things being preserved. They are.
Thank
Well,
you, thank you.
You know, actually, because the building that I have is a 3-part building. And I've been so excited about it that I've been kind of rubbing my neighbor's nose in this. And I said, you should have done that. And the one next to me said, well, you know, I want to see this because I'll probably just go ahead and do mine too. So it'll be a spearhead, actually, to really finish that. And it is a 100 block. So I think it'll be great.
Good deal. Great.
Thank you. And thank you so much.
Thank you for jumping through all the hoops that you're having to do to get this fall grant money. There's a lot of rigmarole to it, but thank you for your
Absolutely.
patience and your dedication to that.
Thank you.
Okay, next we have RFP East Capitol Avenue.
So the the sworn to secrecy. There was.
You don't have to make a happy face though.
Sure. There was a closed session in which Tiffany Patterson and Brad Schaefer participated to provide technical assistance. I do know that they were specifically focused on 401 East Capitol and 429 East Capitol with a sense of urgency. Tentatively, 429 redevelopment agreement for 429 East Capitol, which is the funeral home, may be on Monday night's agenda. The agenda hasn't been published, so there's always a chance that the work isn't ready yet and it goes to the next council meeting. But before this meeting, I checked and it was still there tentatively. So it could be on September 16th on Monday night's council agenda.
What about the rest of them? Any ideas?
Those I did not see.
It's on the agenda. Why? I mean,
For a redevelopment agreement.
In other words, they decided who's going to be able to redevelop.
Potentially. I do not have all of the information.
And I can't say until the actual contract comes out, anything about the meeting.
Once the agenda, but so essentially, well, it's would be a bill. So if it does end up staying on Monday night's agenda, it'll be its first read unless they choose to suspend the rules. So I'm just making you aware it could potentially be coming up on Monday, specifically for 429.
What would happen if they suspended the rules?
They could vote
vote on it that night without public.
Instead of a first, second reading, they can just go from there.
Okay. Ready for reports? Do we have any updates from subcommittees? Laura and Tiffany.
Tiffany doesn't know, but yes, we do.
All right, Laura! I support your work in assessment.
I said it wouldn't take me long. It took me several hours, but I'll share with you the boundaries of Old Munisburg. It's the middle brown color. On the west side, it goes to Walnut, up to Mulberry, wraps around to Fillmore, jaunts up Jefferson a little bit, over east through Franklin, down Monroe Street, and then goes along Winton Expressway and encompasses Miller, West Miller. I'm sorry. I will also share with you, I made quick copies of that before I left the house, of my markup. And did I make enough copies? Were you able to get one? Yeah. Okay, I didn't know. Perfect. The red lines are the alleyways, because they aren't depicted in our mapped. You have Schroeder Way, Cedar Way, Tanner Way, Hess Way, and then Schmidt Way. The number of properties within our area, Old Munisburg area, is 405. Now, I know you had mentioned that surveys typically do 100 and some.
So in the past, the direction we've been given is no more than 200 per project because it just becomes too big of a bite. But we also just had a conversation with SHPO staff, and I believe the city of Sedalia did a massive 600 property survey. But you know, so then it becomes a question of so normally we don't have funding locally to do these architectural surveys. We apply consistently through Historic Preservation Fund. Those are a 60-40 split. I can usually come up with the match if it's less than 20,000, just absorbing it within our budget. But if you start bringing it up, we'll have to figure out like how much would a massive survey cost, and could we afford that 40%? Because I don't know that I would be successful in going to council and asking for a supplemental for our architectural survey. I mean, we could try, but.
Right. So the first phase of West Main, how many properties was included on that one?
The first phase?
Yeah, and or the second, do you remember the cost? I mean, what are we looking at cost-wise for 405 properties?
So it's important to also remember, so with the phase 2, I know we were hovering right around that 200 mark, but when you do the survey, you have to survey the primary structure as well as any outbuildings that go with it. So there ended up being like 600 forms, right? How many was it? 400? 600 photos? Yeah. So it becomes, you got to remember the garages and the sheds and the different things that go on the property. So how much would it cost? I don't know. We'd have to put it out for bid or request quotes, and that may be something that we can ask, our current existing contractor if they would do us a solid and just tell us how much they would.
Well, it would be nice to do
back of the napkin kind of thing.
Area in one survey, so we're not looking at phase 2 occurring, 3 or 4 years from now, because we just learned tonight that our very outdated survey in this area is affecting decisions. I did remove like Monroe Street, kind of dwindling it down more to like the core of the area, but that just saves 28, so that brings it down to 377. And so then I shaved off Madison and then all those alleys between Madison and Monroe, and it shaved it down to 65, so it still brought it to 312. So it would be nice just to be able to do it all in one. So I would hate to try to.
Well, and maybe this is a better perspective. So the survey that we just did for phase 2 ended up being 27,000 and some change for that project, total project cost. And then we split it, have a 60-40 split.
Probably 40 something.
For around 200 properties.
It was 27, so this would be double that, yeah.
You can get them to do it a little cheaper.
Do what?
You can let them do it a little cheaper. Be real nice to them.
We are whimsy to the federal procurement process.
Well, and some of them, on Walnut Street, on the east side of Walnut Street, the only thing there is the electric company, some electric thing. So, and then on Miller Street, that's basically new development, although I do think that hotel is cool looking. But we're gonna lose more, I think, on Miller Street. We just lost the log cabin there, and I think there's gonna be a couple more sooner than later. So, I don't know, it's just up to the commission on.
Are you talking about Hotel de Ville or?
Yeah, I think that's a cool looking, has character a little bit. It's older, I don't know how old it is. So.
So what do you need from us on this? Anything?
Just direction on what this body would like to, how you would like to proceed.
If we want to go through with the survey and inquire as to what it would be? Is that what you're?
Well, just like next steps, is this, do you want to survey this area? And then if you want to survey this area, we can kind of do some research, figure out how much it would cost to do a full survey, maybe ask the experts and say, hey, how would you approach this?
So do you want to make a motion to move forward with this?
Yes, I like to make a motion.
Just to be clear, just making that motion to explore,
You're giving staff direction.
but we're not saying we're going to. I mean, ultimately we want to, but if it costs like $1 billion, which I hope it wouldn't, but
Hope you win the lottery, Christine.
just throwing out an obnoxious number, we wouldn't obviously.
Trying to know what the number is going to be, and this is something in our preview that we need to do because we need a tool like this to help us to move forward and prevent demos. So
I just want to make.
I would like to make a motion that we proceed, we direct city staff to see what it would cost to the entire area. And then by phases. I don't know if we want to make a determination of which would be phase 1 and which would be phase 2, so, or wait until we have numbers.
We make an assessment after we saw the budget, because there might be an impending issue in one area, and we go, okay, we're gonna do that versus this other area. So.
Okay, so we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Yes.
Oh.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Any more discussion? The one thing I will say is I guarantee in 5 years it's not going to be cheaper.
Yeah.
And that was essentially for, to bring back options, cost of survey.
Yes.
Yeah, explore. Okay.
Boston, Dietz, Green, Patterson.
Yes.
Schaefer.
Aye.
Ward,
Hi.
Warren, Wheat.
Aye. Okay, thank you, Laura. And Tiffany. Okay, Deborah.
No report.
No report this time.
Good thoughts sent your way, Laura.
Okay, Donna, do you have something about Missouri Preservation Conference?
Just that we are going to it. Rachel and I are presenting down there on the Historic Legacy District. And we've got 45 minutes, an hour to talk, and 15 minutes for questions. So we'll see how it goes, and they record us, so we'll bring the recording back and see how great we did.
Okay. Any public comments?
Nope.
Okay, our next meeting is October the 8th. Here. Kind of a motion. Oh, one more thing. Thank you, Doris.
Thank you.
Everyone wave to Doris.
Just so that y'all know, most of you do, but September 29th is the Homes Tour on Capitol Avenue, and it's Pride in Progress, so you can go in and see what they're doing to Ivy Terrace. Molly from the city is going to be there to talk about the RFP process and who got those properties, the ones they know about at that point, as well as go through like Holly's building and the Cam Peters building and so forth. So if y'all can come over there, it'll be interesting.
What was the date?
September 29th, 1 to 4.
Okay.
And
Did I have
tickets
a-
are $15 in advance and $20 day of.
That's a Sunday, right?
It's a Sunday.
Okay.
Mark Schleer is giving a talk about the student's perspective of Lincoln University's history on the 23rd at the Missouri Regional Library. It's part of the lecture series that we have partnered between the library and LU, and it is free.
What time?
6:30.
I have also a couple announcements. Oktoberfest, September 28th, 10 to 6. That group that was in here, and luckily I'm missing the meeting. We've been meeting weekly for months because we don't have a coordinator, so the board is coordinating the Oktoberfest this year. It's our annual fundraiser that helps with beautification efforts in the area, like the corner sign that you see there in front of the
Read liquor.
the store that was in, and all the
Get one of those
trees and the plantings, and we have a landscaper that keeps the area clean.
If we do find out how much that costs, would Old Munisburg be able to help provide
I'm
that?
sure. I will bring it to the board. And then also, this Saturday at 10 o'clock, there is a Golden Hammer Award at 415 East McCarty. It's this one, you can see right here across from, no.
That way.
That way.
Down there. Down there.
Across from the parking lot. It's Saturday at 10, and that's our September award. Our August award is being presented on September 23rd, the same night as, I think you had just said, you had a thing going on too. It's at 5:30 though. And it's Riverside Manor, Jeff City Parks and Recs. So, I welcome you all to come. They usually don't last too long. It's just a,
It's the fun afterwards.
yeah, get to look inside, and it's just a sign planting and certificate thing. So,
Okay. We have a motion to adjourn.
Yes. I'll move.
Second. Thank you. Have a good evening.